John F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States. The legendary statesman ushered in a new age in the midst of the Cold War.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
During the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, he won Soviet concessions that brought back the world from the brink of nuclear war.
We increased the chance greatly, as I think there's bound to be refining the Soviet Union, there always is, which leaves the only one alternative, which is to find nuclear weapons, which is a hell of an alternative, and begin a nuclear exchange.
At home, he rose up to deep-seated injustices and championed the civil rights movement. It was also Kennedy who took the first steps in space exploration, enabling man to land on the moon.
What kind of a peace do I mean, and what kind of a peace do we seek? Not merely peace for Americans, but peace for all men and women.
By looking to his legacy, can we find clues to solving the critical problems rocking the world today? An international symposium took place at Waseda University in 2015. A panel discussion in the first part of the program explored his new frontier policy.
Rights that would enable an African American like me the opportunity to vote. Would he not have done what he did?
As President Kennedy set the challenge, that's when we grow as a society. Unless you have a difficult challenge to overcome, you don't get there.
A second panel discussion took up Kennedy's security strategy.
Having felt existentially nuclear danger, he was determined after that, never again should we have to see something like this.
People thought that peace could never be achieved, but he challenged that.
What can young people, the driving force of the future in Japan and in the world, learn from John F. Kennedy? We discuss this today with top leaders from the United States and Japan. Waseda University has a profound relationship with John F. Kennedy. Its history goes back more than half a century when Kennedy was inaugurated as president. At the time, a protest movement against the revision of the Japan-US Security Treaty was growing in this country. The situation was heated enough that no single US president had visited Japan since the end of World War II. President Kennedy drew up plans to travel to Japan to improve bilateral relations. To pave the way for this, he first dispatched his brother, then Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, in 1962. Robert Kennedy delivered his speech in the Okuma Auditorium of Waseda University, the very site of this symposium.
ケネディ長官は講演会に出席しましたが、ここでは一部の学生が騒いだため、会場は一時混乱し、ケネディ長官もしばらく壇上で立ち往生。
The mood was tense. When his speech began, pandemonium broke out with the heckling and jeering of some 3,000 students. The Attorney General calmly told the students that he wanted to exchange ideas with them without misunderstandings. His sincere attitude slowly altered the atmosphere, and a student launched into singing the university's anthem.
学生代表とケネディ長官との質疑応答が行われました。学生たちは最後には都の西北を合唱。
By the time the song ended, a sense of unity had overcome the room. This episode has long been cited as a turning point in Japan-US relations. And last year, the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library Foundation in the United States reached out to Waseda University to cooperate on making this international symposium possible. The library has permanent exhibits of family photographs. These candid images are of Kennedy's eldest daughter, Caroline. Today, she is the U.S. ambassador to Japan. For this symposium, she delivered the welcoming address.
Good afternoon. I'm honored to be here and grateful to President Kamata and the faculty and students of Waseda University for hosting us in this historic auditorium. I have heard a lot about that event. I hope very much that none of you will throw any chairs today. President Kennedy presided over a period of remarkable change in American history, a period in which many of the issues that are still making headlines today had their beginnings. At home, the United States confronted its history of slavery and discrimination, and my father put the full force of the federal government on the side of those seeking the rights to which they were entitled. That willingness to face history, to include everyone in the American dream, regardless of race, religion, gender, or disability, is a legacy that I'm proud of. In a June 1963 speech at American University, he said, "Let us focus on a more practical, more attainable peace, based not on a sudden revolution in human nature, but on a gradual evolution in human institutions, on a series of concrete actions and effective agreements which are in the interest of all concerned. Genuine peace must be the product of many nations, the sum of many acts. It must be dynamic, not static, changing to meet the challenge of each new generation. For peace is a process, a way of solving problems." 2 months later, the US, UK, and Soviet Union signed the Limited Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, the first agreement to ban the testing of nuclear weapons in the atmosphere, space, and underwater. It was his proudest accomplishment. Today, the work of peace is unfinished. The world is more troubled and dangerous now, and the pace of change is faster. I hope the discussion here today will help the students here decide how you can make your contribution to freedom and democracy. And I hope that 50 years from now, you will return to Waseda and share your wisdom with another generation committed to peace. Thank you very much.
Now, please welcome Professor Seiichiro Yonekura, the moderator of the first panel. The panelists are Mr. Charles Bolden, Ms. Mary Oshima, and Mr. Kiyoshi Higuchi, and Ms. Carol Hook, and Mr. Koichi Wakata.
Good afternoon. My name is Seiichiro Yonekura, professor of Hitotsubashi University in Tokyo, and I'm teaching innovation and entrepreneurship. As I'm the one of the children who are inspired by President Kennedy, before we start panel, we would like to show video clips how the President Kennedy committed himself to space development, innovation, and also human rights.
Just 4 months into his presidency, Kennedy made a speech before Congress that stunned the world.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
A man on the moon. Kennedy had set this dreamlike plan into motion. The space exploration program he initiated continued after his death. 8 years later, the momentous day arrived. In 1969, Apollo 11 commander Neil Armstrong landed on the moon. He proclaimed at the time, "That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind." Kennedy had ushered in the space age. The new frontier policy was at the heart of his spirit of challenge. In the 19th century, people in the United States expanded west in search of a new frontier and new land. In keeping with this spirit, Kennedy's new frontier policy sought to solve the remaining social problems of the 20th century.
The new frontier of which I speak is not a set of promises. It is a set of challenges. The new frontier is here, whether we seek it or not. Beyond that frontier are uncharted areas of science and space, unsolved problems of peace and war, unconquered problems of ignorance and prejudice, unanswered questions of poverty and surplus.
Under the new frontier policy, he embarked on an attempt to eliminate the discrimination and poverty that remained deep-rooted in American society, while simultaneously pushing for space exploration.
So, Administrator Bolden.
I actually was a senior in high school when President Kennedy left us. It was the darkest day I had ever experienced as a young person. President Kennedy represented the hope for all of us in the South. Never dreamed of being an astronaut, but always keeping in the back of my mind what President Kennedy had taught us as I was growing up, and watching how we had entered the space race, had become the leader, had come from behind to become the leader, and it sort of guided me through the rest of my life.
Thank you.
It is no exaggeration to say that the huge influence of President Kennedy was the reason I chose the path of engineering. One thing I will never forget is the Apollo program. Apollo 11 reached the moon, and Neil Armstrong, the commander, he walked on the moon. When I saw this scene, I was very, very excited. It made me think that when I grew up, I would like to change the world as he did. That was what really sparked my interest in the sciences. I was especially taken with engineering because while science pursues truth, engineering is a way of applying the truth so that it can be beneficial to lives. I believe the Apollo plan of sending humankind to the moon was achieved due to the power of the engineers and the researchers.
My name is Higuchi. As a person involved in space research, the biggest impression I have of President Kennedy is the fact that he proved mankind could go out into space and land on other planets. In the early days of space exploration, there was a lot of doubt about whether humans could ever travel outside of Earth. But he clearly showed the world that this was possible. The second point is the Apollo program. I think it was a major feat for the United States. But for some reason, we also interpret this as a major feat of mankind. I think the Apollo program sparked the concept of international cooperation in manned space programs.
My name is Carol Fulp, and I'm the CEO of an organization called the Partnership. We work to advance leaders of color. As you know, President Kennedy entered office during the Civil Rights Movement. rights that would enable an African American like me the opportunity to vote, the opportunity to be educated in public schools, in public colleges, the opportunity to have fair housing, and the opportunity to be served at restaurants, theaters, retail shops, and more. Because he did what he did, I am visible to you today.
I flew 4 times in space, twice on the space shuttle, International Space Station, and Russian Soyuz spacecraft, and I served as a commander of the Expedition 39 last year on board the International Space Station as part of my 6-month stay on board the space station. I still vividly remember when I saw the Apollo 11 landing. At the time, I was 5 years old. But I still remember the vivid excitement, and everybody on the whole planet felt that way. And because of the excitement that I cherished since then, I am here with you.
So let's start about the space. Actually, the space is very important, I agree, but we have simultaneously the many problems here. So I'd like to redefine the importance of space, how we actually now redefine the importance of space development.
Well, I think as Koichi has commented from his experiences of twice on the International Space Station, I doubt that President Kennedy ever envisioned we would be where we are today, but that's not important. What's most important is that he envisioned something that nobody else thought of as being possible. And I tell people all the time back in the U.S. that NASA, we are very proud because we turn science fiction into science fact and we make the impossible possible. I have become acquainted with a lot of people who were in the early space program. They said they went home thinking the president had lost his mind. However, the next morning they said they woke up and they realized, no, that wasn't the case at all. The president had faith in the people of NASA that they could make his dream come true or his vision come true. We have been blessed actually to have had 2 other presidents who have had the same type of vision. President Clinton, who we'll hear tonight, who had the vision of an international space station. We had gone through fits and starts with space program. He was the one who had the idea of bringing the Russians on board. They were the last members of the International Space Station team. And he admitted last night that lots of people thought he was crazy when he came up with that idea. I now have the privilege of working for President Obama, who had the idea and pronounced it in April of 2010 that in the 2030s, NASA would send humans to Mars. There are a lot of people that thought he was crazy, but we do not believe that, and we are now well on the road to putting humans on Mars in the 2030s, we hope.
2030?
2030s. A
decade.
2030s,
okay.
Everybody wants to pin me down. 10 years.
Go to the Mars. Make impossible to possible. The challenge, human challenge. And how do you think, Dr. Wakata, about the space program?
As I mentioned, when I was 5 years old, when I saw the Apollo lunar landing, Japan did not have the human space program. And for Japan, participating in the space station program can be considered or can be a symbolic challenge in scientific innovation. And becoming a partner of the ISS program, when it was proposed by the United States back in 1984, Japan made the first step into the human space exploration. Now, 30 plus years later, Japan has become a reliable partner as we demonstrated our capacity to design and operate successfully the Japanese Kibo module and as well as the Konotori spacecraft, which is essential to the International Space Station operation. And because of this trust that we gained from our partner countries, that resulted in our capability to appoint crew commander of the International Space Station, which led the crew of 6 US crew members and Russian crew members last year. So this was all possible because of the seed that President Kennedy planted a long time ago, which has blossomed in this international manner.
Let's see. So international cooperation in the space, and as Higuchi-san mentioned before, this is not the achievement of US only, but all human race. In this line, how Japan and Japanese people can contribute this space development.
Starting with the International Space Station and our Earth observation satellites, as well as in other areas, we're now being called one of the most reliable partners in space exploration. Of course, we have a proven background in the Japanese economy, industry, and technological advancements. But in terms of the world of space exploration, frankly speaking, we hesitated at first. While we were engaged in the work, however, we came to see our strengths as Japanese. We actually became aware of these strengths when we started engaging in international collaborations. We have a strong presence. If we can pass on these strengths, then I think we Japanese can make more achievements in space exploration going forward. I think we do have the skills and platform to achieve these great things. I think one of the reasons we have been welcomed in the international program is because Japanese culture is different from that of the West. Of course, global standards must be met, but we should also embrace our cultural differences. There is value in that. We do things a little differently. We should be aware of this. We do things differently. We do things that aren't done in the West. I believe it is important to value these differences.
Not only in terms of outer space, but also here on Earth as well, we have the capability of contributing to science and technology advancements. My background is mechanical engineering, and I've been involved in fluid dynamics and hydrodynamics. These disciplines are already being applied in the field of aerospace. Multidisciplinary research is being carried out, so the boundaries between and amongst various research topics are narrowing and blurring. Right now, developments for space and Earth overlap and contribute to each other. That is the relationship now. So, from the perspective of integrated scientific technology, there are huge opportunities for Japan and its people to make contributions.
Still, I have some difficulty. You spend huge money for space, but in this Earth, poverty, widening gap, we need some linkage between the problem here and frontier is not there, but frontier must be here too, I think.
Well, Marie mentioned earlier the fact that, space is one thing. We shouldn't forget why we do it. We do it to make life better for people here on Earth. And that is the ultimate goal of all of our space programs. If you look at what we've done in getting to the International Space Station, especially when you look at miniaturization of technologies that have come from having to send people to places like the moon, or having Higuchi on the International Space Station where he was there for 6 months, so his doctor needed to be able to diagnose things that may go wrong with him. So we took an ultrasound, used to be a giant machine. Ultrasound today on the International Space Station is a device this small that has been taken and now commercialized and handed off to industry. So you have third world countries where a midwife has an ultrasound machine that he or she can use to talk to a doctor who's 200 miles away caring for a pregnant woman. We have water recirculation or water recycling systems created so that he could have yesterday's coffee as today's coffee. And that is now, again, in third world countries and, as a matter of fact, in poor parts of the United States where we are battling to try to solve the problem where 90-some-odd% of infant mortality is due to waterborne pathogens. Just kids who die of germs that come from water because the water's not clean. Those are the things that people don't see coming from the space program that are critical.
The various technologies that were developed to get man on the moon are now indispensable to daily life. Car navigation systems, GPS, and other indispensable technology. Of course, climate, as well as natural disaster monitoring devices, and also mapping. All the technologies that were advanced for the Apollo program have been refined and tweaked and harnessed to improve our lives, improve society. Today, these are things indispensable to humankind.
In this sense, the torch must be passed. In this line, I agree.
Tackling the country's widespread racial discrimination was another key issue of Kennedy's New Frontier policy. In 1963, more than 200,000 people marched on Washington, seeking an end to racial bias.
I have a dream. My 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream.
Kennedy responded to the voices of the people. He made a strong appeal to abolish all laws that had led to racial discrimination and to create a society where all people were truly equal.
It ought to be possible, in short, for every American to enjoy the privileges of being American without regard to his race or his color. It ought to be possible for American consumers of any color to receive equal service in places of public accommodation, such as hotels and restaurants and theaters and retail stores, without being forced to resort to demonstrations in the street.
1 year after Kennedy's death, the Civil Rights Act was finally passed, banning racial, religious, and all other forms of discrimination. Diversity, accepting all people. Inclusion, blending all people's ideas. Kennedy was the first to raise awareness of these major issues which are very relevant today.
After 50 years of Selma incident, and after 50 years, the Kennedy's library memorial anniversary, did we progress?
No question. There is no question that we have progressed. And I would say, if you don't, anyone who doesn't think we have progressed as a result of the initiatives of President Kennedy, there are many people who say that he actually just the force of his will, once he was taken from this earth, it would have gone away had he not been so influential in the life of his vice president, who became the president and actually pushed through many of the programs that may have been very difficult for President Kennedy to do. I'm here. You look at Koichi Wakata, you look at especially Ambassador Kennedy sitting down here. That is incredible progress. Does that mean we've made it? No. And that's what I think all of us on the panel talk about. There is so much work left to be done.
Yes.
And that is, if there is a legacy to be taken from President Kennedy, it is that no matter how good we think we are, there is always something else that needs to be done if this world is going to be the kind of place that we want it to be.
Okay. How do you think, Carol?
Oh, I absolutely agree. We've made progress. But I actually think we need to look at this as a journey. There's much more, as Charlie said, to be done. And all of us have to do it together. Just 45 years after President Kennedy encouraged us to make the world safe for diversity, we now have a President Obama. That's progress. But we also have to acknowledge, while we have a Selma, we also have a Ferguson today. So this is a part of our journey.